So thank you everyone for coming. This is our first InboundTO of 2016, so we're pretty excited and really glad that you guys can make it out. We're going to be talking about the essentials of client communication today. And if you like what you see tonight, we are doing a Google Partners Digital Breakfast in February on the 24th. We just opened up registration today. So if you guys are interested in coming out and learning a bit more about PPC at Google's headquarters here in Toronto, you can join us. Matthew Hunt will be speaking, as well as Tayab Rizvi from Google. So we'd love to see you out there as well. And for anyone who's looking for a new opportunity, we are always hiring to expand our team. So we're looking for people in client communications, so account directors, specialists in SEO and PPC. So if you're interested, you can talk to Edita or just find us online as well. And then, of course, shout out to Warren for videoing the event. The event will be available on video about a week and a half afterwards, as well as the slides. So don't worry about scribbling furiously. They'll be there for you. But big thank you to him for coming out and making sure that we have a great setup and that we'll be able to use these learnings in times to come. So tonight, you're pretty much done listening to me with the introduction. So what's up first is really client communication tools and the power of influence. So we're going to give you a sneak peek behind the curtain at what we use here at Powered by Search and demo some of the things that make our lives easier as account directors. And then talk a bit about the unique role that someone in a client-facing position has to deal with. So we'll talk about the power of influence before taking a quick 15-minute break. So guys, drum roll, I'm going to introduce you. So tonight you're going to be hearing from our account directors. So they really are the linchpins at the organization. They keep us going and moving. So first up, I'd like to introduce Dan Hill. Brings over 20 years of experience in the industry, worked with Remax and increased their traffic fourfold. So Dan leads the team here at Powered by Search. And when he's not busy making clients happy and making internal teams happy, he's usually out with his camera or enjoying a good cup of coffee with his family. So he'll be up first taking you through the tools. Then we have the lovely Claudia. So she brings a lot of experience with some big brands you might recognize like Ubisoft or Warner Brothers. So she's been in the marketing field for quite some time. And we'll speak about the power of influence with Michelle. And when she's also not marketing, she is a big travel guru. So she lived in Thailand for a year, so you can ask her about that on the break. Michelle, also one of our account directors, so she brings some experience in a lot of the technical. So she's one that loves to get her hands dirty in PPC and understand really what the specialists are doing and bring that knowledge to her clients. She's also interested in photography and very active, so always challenging us to do better. And then finally we have Rob, who will be facilitating the workshop, probably because he used to be a TV and radio personality, so he's great at bringing that out in people, but he's been in the marketing and business development field for over 20 years, so I'm sure he's going to impart a lot of wisdom. So that is enough out of me, so I'm going to turn it over to Dan, and he'll get us started.
Great. All right, well, we're going to talk about tools to start. So tools can really help us do a whole bunch of different kinds of things, and I'm sure you use a lot of tools in your day-to-day. So one of the things we're going to start with on our side is to talk about the kind of tools that we use here and why we use them and what the benefits are for using them. So who's in the role as the client? So who does client services? You guys already kind of talked a little bit about that, but hands up quickly in terms of client services. Okay, there's a few. And then who here kind of works or answers to a client at some point? Probably most of you. Yeah, so between those two, pretty much everybody's involved to some degree in client communication. So whether you work directly with them, whether you are the client, because we all have that kind of an experience as we go. So one of the things that we're going to look at as we go through here, has anyone ever had a client experience just go terribly, terribly wrong? Anybody not have that ever happen? Everything's been perfect and just wonderful? Because I'd love for you, Matt, all right, well you should, oh you do work here, so there you go, all right, that's great. So let's face it, we've all had some challenges with client communication. We wish that it would always go smoothly, but we're human beings and there's always going to be some bumps along the way. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today was preparing ourselves and prepping ourselves with tools that we can use to become a more effective communicator. So without further ado, we're going to kind of jump in and look at what some of those are. So we're going to look at some of the preferred tools that we have that we use here. We're going to talk about the balancing act of being in the middle. When you're in client services, you're almost always between a rock and a hard place, or if you want to think of it in a more positive kind of way, you're always that broker, right? You're trying to find that value on both sides. You're kind of looking at the client and saying, what do they really need? I know what they're asking for, but what do they really mean? What's really going to drive their business? And when you're on the side of representing yourself or your business, you also have that in mind. You know, you need to deliver against what is good for our business, what's going to move the needle, what's going to drive us revenue, keep the doors open so that we have work to next day, you know, the next month, the next year. So it's negotiating kind of that friendly middle space. So doing that balancing act. Okay, so we're going to jump into tools. So this is where I was jumping in my head. So we do quite a few tools here. We love them. One of the things we're going to start to talk about, so I'll go through that list quickly, is teamwork. So teamwork's kind of a project management tool. We use Slack. Slack, anybody use Slack here? Anybody? Okay, a few hands. Yeah, great. Okay, good. Zero inbox. We love Slack for internal communication, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Trello. Hands up for Trello. Trello, oh, great, lots of users, excellent, okay. And Google Alerts, that probably goes without saying, yep, lots of hands on that too. And then finally HubSpot, inbound marketers, probably know a lot about HubSpot. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that is kind of the stack. We do use other tools, but when we think about them, that's kind of the primary suite of tools that we like to use here. So let's jump into teamwork a little bit. So what does teamwork do? So teamwork, as you might expect, allows teams to do work. So anybody used Basecamp before or familiar with Jason Fried and 37 Signals? Okay, so we looked at them as a potential tool. I recommend his book, Rework, if you haven't already read it or looked at it. It's amazing thinking about how you do work and how to rethink about why we do work and how to get benefit from it. And the folks at Teamwork took that to heart, so they looked at what 37 Signals had done with Basecamp, and they wanted to build that kind of a little bit more on steroids. So what I mean by that is Basecamp was pretty lean. It's like you had to have a task. That task had to be assigned to one person, and it was very minimalist in how it approached doing work. So for our organization, we needed a little bit more flexibility, so we chose Teamwork to do that. It's got a couple of extra things that plug into it, which are really kind of cool. It's got a ticketing system. So if you take requests in, like the typical kind of call center kind of thing, you know, email support at poweredbysearch.com as an example, that would go into the support arm of Teamwork for us, and then that creates a ticket, and then that ticket can actually connect into another platform, which is the proper Teamwork that I'm going to talk about, which allows for tasks to be created and assigned to people. Those tasks can be grouped into projects. If you use MS Project or any of those traditional kind of project management tools, you know, think of Teamwork as a very friendly online version of that. And it also allows those tasks to be shared and made visible to clients. So this is one of the things that we really love. And then pull up a quick demo maybe, or instance of Teamwork. You can see it here on the dashboard. So one of the things that's so great about this is allowing you to have an overarching view of kind of all of the activities. So that's the view you're seeing here. And then this is a view of all the different tasks. Those tasks then are kind of rolled up into lists or task lists. So you can group things together, right, in a really kind of effective way. And then you can assign milestones to those. When are these things due? Now, the great thing about what we love about this is how many people have ever got bogged down because you're trying to communicate with a client or with somebody else about when something's going to be due. And you spend half your day just emailing them updates all the time about when things are due. What we can do here is we can expose some of this information, like those milestones, to the client so they can self-serve. They can go in and see when's the milestone going to be delivered to them. They can look at the tasks and see what the task lists are. They got a nice calendar view that they can look at to help them understand. And it's cut down so much on that back and forth kind of communication. It makes it really transparent of what we're doing for the client. If they're unsure what we're doing, we kind of refer them here. One of the great things when you kind of dig into a particular kind of task here is that we can have different kinds of communication around it. So let's say we need to have a private kind of internal conversation, you know, about something that's going wrong, you know, with a task, let's say. We don't want the client to know that, but we want to have that kind of threaded conversation. We can do that through the comments that are here, all right? And then when we want that information to be exposed to the client, let's say we've wrapped up our internal discussion, we can make something public, right? And then the client can see where we netted out on our internal discussion around something. So that's a really powerful kind of way of being transparent with your client, letting them know what's going on, but at the same time, not having to rework stuff. Right? So we're only working once, and we're trying to minimize the amount of communication and back and forth we need to do with the client. One of the things that I like to point out, it does do files. So we integrate this with Google Drive so that we're not storing all the files inside Teamwork. If you have other kind of online storage, cloud storage, you can integrate those. It's pretty flexible that way to be able to do that. I guess the last bit I would say is that it has a chat function that's kind of integrated with it. We don't use it here. We use Slack instead. So I'm going to use that as my segue about jumping into Slack. Yep, question?
I was just wondering, does that integrate with Trello? How does that integrate with Trello?
We haven't integrated it with Trello here. And I don't know that it does out of the box. No head shakes. Okay. I would say that one of we haven't shown a Gantt chart version here, but Trello, one of the great things about Trello is you can have kind of a sequence. So you have a list of tasks or whatever that you're kind of grouping, and usually they kind of read left to right as you go across. So you can have something that's, here are all of the tasks over here, here's what you're working on, here's what's complete or with a client, and then here's what's done, complete, and can kind of go away. So it has that kind of function in a kind of a Gantt chart flow inside of Teamwork, but it's not, yeah.
It'd be nice to not have to replicate work,
Yeah, it's very true, and we find that we do that a little bit too. So I think when we give some examples about Trello, when we use it internally here, if we're trying to integrate like email with a task, we end up copying and pasting into Trello a little bit from here, from Teamwork and from other stuff. So there is a little bit of rework there for folks who use it. I don't use it as Trello as much. I tend to rely on this a little bit more as we go. Does anyone here use something like Teamwork? So yeah, okay, which ones? Asana, yep, it's a good program, yep.
Trello, we call it Community Live.
Oh, okay, I'm not familiar with that one. Do you like it?
Yeah, I like it. There's some of the usability looks nicer in Teamwork, but it's a similar type of idea. It has, what we like about it is it has a light CRM built in. So as you're moving it through the funnel, you can convert it to a project right away. And so people can see visibility, and the emails are automatically pulled in from Gmail and stuff, so you don't even have to chat. You can still live in email, but it's all pulled in, so we like that.
Nice, that's great. Yeah, this doesn't have a front end to it, so it doesn't have that kind of CRM component. It's really just designed for projects. It does have a feature which we use quite a bit. So for each of the projects, you have kind of a client email. So the client email could be client name @messages.teamwork.com or whatever, and then yeah, similar? Okay. Yeah, so each of the conversations that you can have with a client kind of email back and forth, and it becomes threaded so that you have that view and everyone can kind of see that communication with the client. So it's not siloed in email. Yep.
Do you guys batch your systems or processes and then repeat them for different clients?
Yeah, there's templates in here. That's a great question. So task lists, we have a number of task lists that we template out, and that's a great time-saving device where you can kind of grab them and bring them across, and yes, exactly, clone them out or reuse. We continually tweak them as we go as well. I would say one of the things that I think is an enhancement that would happen, it's difficult to clone tasks or copy them. You can do it, but it's not as easy a drag and drop and not maybe as fast as it, ideally I think we would like it to be. But yeah, any other questions quickly before I bounce on to? Okay, so next one we were going to look at was going to be Slack. So we use Slack as an internal communication tool. So for those of you who use it, I'm going to be asking questions later about how you use it and how you've extended it. It's quite a powerful tool. So we basically use it as a kind of zeroing our inbox. So what we mean by that is we want to get everything like out of the inbox so we don't have our email inbox with any kind of internal communication. So all internal communication would go through Slack. So how do we do that? Well, Slack helps by having a variety of different methods to allow us to do that. One is direct messaging. So if I want to have a conversation, went back and forth, you and I can have that totally siloed, no one needs to see it. But let's say we have an ad hoc team. There's 3 people that have to work together on this project. The project's only a couple days long. We can group that together, and have direct messaging happen inside that group. Really flexible, easy to do, and archived. And then you can see kind of up at the top there, you have some channels. So channels we use them, you see there as kind of functional groups. So you'll see account directors there, an SEO team, our PPC team, our marketing team. And each of them, you can subscribe to a channel, much like you'd want to follow a thread or something on a social channel. So you can listen to some of those. So when I open mine up in the morning, there's a bunch of different, highlights up and down that side of all these different channels that are happening. It's not something I'm interested in right away. I don't have to go look there. But if there's direct messages that are coming into me, that's probably something I need to look at. Someone's got to, they need something from me. I might be a blocker on a task or whatever. So I need to be able to jump on that. So really powerful way of having communication kind of back and forth. There's some fun stuff that's in here as well. It does Giphy. I don't know if you guys know what Giphy is, but it allows for ways to bring in animated information. So there's a lot of stuff in the random channel that we have, which is just, somebody had a birthday recently, so you do happy birthday, and it just grabs a random image from the web and kind of brings it in of, birthday cake or somebody dancing or falling into a pool or whatever. So there's some nice little integration. So just on that note, Slack's fairly powerful with terms of its API and how you can kind of reach out for some of the guys who are more kind of tech in the room and or other people who use Slack. Do you have any special integrations that you really like that you use it for?
Yeah. We integrated Asana with Slack, so all of our tasks are automatically added to one Slack.
Nice. That's a great way to do it. We use a little bot, Meekin, which helps for scheduling. So as that kind of comes in, I get a notification if somebody sends me a meeting invite or whatever. Then I can just hit accept or type accept or yes, no, and it kind of does that for me. I don't have to bounce into my calendar application to do that. Yeah. Any other? Yep.
So I was just curious. So you use Slack primary for internal messaging?
Yeah.
And what else? So I guess you use your Google Drive to maybe highlight the shared files?
Yeah, that's right. So you can store them here inside of Slack, but it's better to just kind of hot link out. You can set up a connection so that it knows where your Drive folder is, and you can kind of link out to that. And again, it's a better way of storing files.
In your experience, do you use it for any other things beyond those?
I think that's the primary function, but... Oh, that's true. So thank you for that. Well, we're talking about Google Alerts later. So that's something that we use for some of our clients where, so we'll manage a client group of 10 or 20 clients. So if you want to keep up to date, Google Alerts is a great way, which I'll talk about later, about getting feeds for what's happening. Those feeds can be kind of connected in. So I build channels for each of my clients. So if there are press releases that go out that say, one of my clients just had a public offering, happen or whatever, I'm familiar with that. I can kind of reach out. So it brings in information to me. I don't have to go search it. So that's one way we use it. Yeah. Great. Okay. So Trello, a lot of Trello users here. I'm not a power Trello user, but we do use it quite a bit internally. A couple of things that we use it for the most part, is around managing those ad hoc kinds of things that we don't use inside those other applications. So those can be things that generally sit with a client. Right? So if we've sent a task over to a client, we're kind of waiting. We need it to be stored somewhere to remind ourselves, yeah, we got to follow up with that client. We're waiting on something from them. For some of our clients who use Teamwork, we can assign them a task. And that's one way to kind of track it. But for some of our clients who don't use Teamwork, a great way to kind of, if you're into email communication back and forth with them, is to kind of set up, your list. So, here we've got just a basic example of a whole kind of to-do list on the left-hand side. If something's being handed over to a team member, internally to kind of work on, you kind of drag and drop in terms of cards, and you can move one easily from one to the next. So one task moves over from the client, from the internal team member to get over to a client, and then gets resolved and it kind of slides over and we can kind of close that out. One of the ways we use this kind of internally is to keep things that happen maybe not in a very regular kind of way. So I'll give you an example. So some of our clients, they're a large client, they pay us quite a bit of money, we're working on them every day, they stay top of mind. Right? But for some of our other clients where, just the nature of our agreement with them, we're only working with them, a little bit kind of each month, it's easy to forget about them. So one of the ways we use Trello is to kind of remind ourselves and of our whole kind of team about, hey, who are some of our forgotten clients? Clients that, we don't reach out to very much on a regular basis, so kind of let's keep them, a little bit more front of mind. So we we find it as an easy way to kind of move those. So after we've dealt with one of our particular clients in a given month, we've reached out, they can kind of move back into that client list on the far left, maybe somebody else can kind of slide over. So it's a good way, again, of keeping information public and obviously assigning some kind of time to each of those columns as you go across. So I don't know, does anyone else use Trello for something other than kind of the things that I've articulated? Any other kind of uses that you found for it that you really like?
I could see them being used like a Kanban.
Yep, that's great. So do people know the idea of a Kanban board? So that's for, I think it was Jira, or it's another application, but it's used quite a bit in development that I know it from as an IT person, where you're looking at kind of what are the key things. So let's say you're doing, in development, you often do sprints. So 2 weeks worth of work or whatever that time period is. What are the high priority things that we should do? And those high priority things kind of get moved over. And as people work on them, they move kind of across. So something might move from being developed to being tested, and once it's tested, it might move into production. So it's a nice way of kind of flowing across from left to right. So yeah, that's a good. I hadn't thought of that use for Trello. It's nice.
Yeah,
Yep.
we actually use it for our development. So it is the priority list, and you have, kind of nice to have things that have been proved to be developed, the things that are actually being developed right now, things are being tested, done, and deployed to staging, etc. Yeah, so, and then you can move things back and forth as required, and it's nice to put people's names on the cards as well, so that they get notification that they're on that one, or you're asking for, you put it in as a bug or something like that, they'll get it right away.
Yeah. Yep, that's great. In fact, Lifehacker and Kickstarter both use Trello for a lot of that. Kickstarter, in particularly, for a lot of the different kinds of ideas where you're, kind of throwing an idea out there and you're workshopping it amongst a group of people who you may or may not know. You're just kind of all in that kind of milieu of being interested in different ideas. So yeah, that's a really powerful use for it. That's great. Okay, thinking of time, I'll keep moving. Okay, quickly for Google Alerts. I probably don't have to say too much about this. Google, obviously the biggest search engine on the planet. They index tons of content. It's great, super powerful. Alerts allows you to set up very flexible kinds of searches for certain kinds of things. So we talked a little bit about, I gave the illustration earlier of using it for clients. So one of the ways we try to keep tabs on what's happening with our client business. So one of our clients is a large real estate company. They do lots of different deals, lots of things always happening, 10,000, 12,000 agents around the country. So if they open a new office somewhere, they want to know what's going on with something with real estate, what some of their competitors doing. It's a great way to be able to get information, and obviously with the integration in Slack, that's something where if I wake up in the morning, I'm coming into work, I want to see what's going on, I see, oh, something neat happened with one of my clients, I can fire off a quick note, just say, hey, congratulations, I saw X, Y, and Z just happen, way to go. A nice way to stay in touch without having to do the searching myself. It's kind of set it and forget it, which is a great way to do it. Has anyone else ever used Google Alerts for something kind of above and beyond what I've talked? Yeah, sorry. That's good.
Find out what's going on and who's doing what. I'll
Yep.
Google alert the word.
Yep. That's great, super powerful. So you can also, you make sure you get the spelling right, and it's worth, kind of checking, because it allows you to do that, where you can kind of see the results that start coming back, and you can kind of fine tune it. So, one of our clients is Remax, so spelling it R-E with the slash, which is the logo, trademark. M-A-X has kind of got that slash in there. If you forget the slash, you still get lots of results, because not everyone spells it correctly. So yeah, it is really sensitive and powerful in that way to be able to do exact kind of matches. Yep.
We've also been using Warble alerts, which goes to Twitter, and it's great because it's like super fast to be able to respond and just like engage people. So for us, like we look at people talking about structured data and schema.org and that kind of thing, and so we just get them like daily, and I kind of just browse through really quickly to see if there's anyone I should sort of reach out to, which is Warble.
Nice. Great. We're going to make this obviously our A list. We have a couple of, in the appendix of kind of other ones that are great as well. We just, we chose certain ones over others, but yeah, that's a great one. I'm not familiar with it, but thanks. Good. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Yeah. Sorry.
Do you also track mentions of company?
Yeah, that's another powerful way to do it. If you know the personalities or the leaders of an organization, you can search them as well and group them together so that, you know, for a particular company, you can kind of thread that information. So, you know, all of the stuff, let's say with Remax, if I wanted to have, you know, Dave Liniger, who's the founder, and then, you know, a couple of the regional owners, you know, I can search for them by name and then group all that information so it shows up kind of in one bucket all around that one kind of client, just as one illustration of how we use it. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a comment as well. Something that a lot of people don't realize with Google Alerts is that it uses the same engine as Google Search. So you can use search operators like quotations, for instance, to get exact match keyword results. And if you want to exclude, for instance, like results that come from the client's website, you can say minus any URL client domain, for instance. So you can find a lot of cool guides online about Google Search operators and integrate those same operators and keywords.
That's a great point. For power users who really want to get specific information, yeah, it obviously, as Mark said, it's Google, so they allow all that kind of detailed and very specific search criteria. That's great. Okay, and then one that's near and dear to Kate's heart, I know, is HubSpot. So we use HubSpot here as our inbound marketing platform. We also use it as our CRM. I know it's not, you know, kind of a robust CRM, but it has a lot of those capabilities and functions. So we use it here as a sales platform that really helps us attract you know, visitors and convert them into leads and then close them. So one of the great things about HubSpot and a lot of the inbound marketing platforms that are out there right now is their ability to be customized and tailored. So you see the example quickly on the screen there where it allows kind of a workflow to happen, right? So let's say I visit a website, you know, and I'm browsing around, you know, and it says I move to get away from the website, a little exit pop-up comes up and says, hey, you know, if you sign up now for our newsletter, you get $10 off your next offer. And I think, okay, sure, I'll bite. I'll put in my email address. You know, if they use a marketing platform like HubSpot, that can generate, you know, an initial email that goes out to me, in this case, that says, hey, saw that you signed up, you know, that's great. You know, we'd love to have you kind of come back and use that coupon. You know, here's a couple of links and a couple of promotions that you might like. If I bite on that and I click, you know, one of those promotions and I go back, HubSpot's smart enough that it knows, okay, now I'm a different part of the funnel. You know, I've moved from being curious to now being much more interested. So now it can start to provide me with much more targeted information and kind of move me, you know, down that sales funnel, being closer, you know, to being captured as a customer, as a client. Let's say I don't click on anything in that email though. Let's say that email comes in and it's like, I'm too busy, I get distracted on something else. After a period of time, you can set something that says, hey, you know, this guy didn't click on anything, 7 days has gone by. Let's send him out a reminder email, right? Let's send out something that says, hey, notice that, you know, you haven't taken, you know, advantage of our offer yet. Love to see you come back, you know, and check that out. So, and you can imagine, you know, it gets much more powerful as you kind of move through those workflow steps, depending on what your business is like and what the goals are that you have in mind for your customer. So it's really kind of cool and powerful tool. I'm just touching on the surface of it, but does anyone else use HubSpot here? HubSpot power users? Okay. Are there any things that you use it for, you know, that are different than kind of the scenario I outlined?
Yeah, no, same thing. In that agency, we use that to sell to clients, and we also use the Sharp Spring as well.
I guess I should also mention, it sparked in my head that all the tools that we're mentioning are also multi-platform, which I guess is just saying, you know, that's kind of what it has to be these days, right? You know, things have to work on all platforms. So that was one of the things that was really important to us as well, being who we are. So those are tools. We can have more conversation maybe near the end about any more questions that you have around tools. So when we're thinking of client communication, you know, there's a suite of tools that we use to kind of help us do that. And that's one kind of thing, you know, technology to kind of help. But there's other kinds. There's more the soft side of tools. And this is where we're going to kind of talk about the power of influence. And that's more human. That's a more human kind of tool, like the power of communication to connect with people. So when you're thinking of, you know, your client services tool belt, you know, there's digital tools that can help us, you know, interact with our clients in a really positive kind of way. And then there's more the soft skills, you know, the client communication that's done in person with people. So that's what I'm going to turn the stage over to Claudia and to Michelle, and they're going to talk more about the power of influence and how that works and how you can use that with your clients.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so yeah, definitely Dan gave a good intro. For the power of influence, I look at it as emotional intelligence. So sometimes beyond the tools and the time hacks that we use, we have to also kind of look in and try to, think about the way we're communicating. And there's a lot of different things that we can do that can go wrong, that can go right. So these are the 4 main things that I feel that the rest of us discussed, and we feel that these are common themes. So this should help you navigate basically being in the middle. And so how do we, balance from being, with the client and also the internal team? So that's the number 1 point that we want to get across. The second one is how to feel empowered to make requests. So how do you take, what you're leveraging for the client and put that in front of the team and move that forward? And then third is something that, we all have to do, which is reading between the lines. And that's being a situational analyst, right? So you want to look around and basically pick up cues and do a little bit of Sherlock Holmes and digging into finding the meaning of things. And then last, which I think is kind of like the glue of everything, is positivity. So I feel that without positivity, a lot of these different things won't work together. And so that's something that we really want you guys to take home after the presentation as well. Okay, so on to Michelle.
Great, thanks, Claudia. So one fine line you may find if you're ever in the role of dealing with an external client and your internal team is that you are often put right in the middle. So part of the challenge that you have is knowing when it's appropriate to advocate for each side. When do you go for what the client is requesting, or where do you go for what your internal team is requesting? So for example, if you have a client coming to you and they're asking for you to build a full brand new site for them, meanwhile, your internal team is saying, oh, no, we only have the capabilities to build a page. You have to find that right balance to be able to merge the client request along with what your internal team is requesting and marrying the two together in order to make sure both sides are satisfied with the outcome and you get a really good quality product that comes out. Tied into this is always to avoid over-promising. The last thing you want to do to a client is say, I'm going to give you the sun and the whole universe and you're going to be so happy. Meanwhile, the expectation on your team is that you can only deliver the moon. This is the bandwidth you have, this is what's within scope, and this is the project at hand. So you have to find the balance, once again, of making sure you don't give too much of a promise to the client in order to make sure that they're happy with what they're receiving, they understand the capabilities, as well as understanding that it's within the services they signed off with you. So going to this even further, these are all just kind of building down the list. So you also have to know when to stand your ground. For example, if a client emails you and says, we need you to do this request and have it done by tomorrow, and you initially are like, oh, I really want to please you, yes, we can totally do it, but in reality, this is going to take a week of your team's time to do. So it's up to you to know to stand your ground, and it is okay to say no to demanding requests and say, look, we want to deliver you a quality product. This is the amount of time we need for a team in order to make sure you're really happy with the outcome. And more often than not, the client is going to be perfectly happy with that answer. As well, if you have a client that is always giving you increasingly demanding requests, they want 20 things a day, they want it delivered now. Everything is urgent in their eyes, but in reality, if everything's urgent, there's no such thing as anything being urgent. So as account directors, we find that we often have to take the role of prioritizing what the client request is coming in, to understand what is truly important to them. Also saying to the client too, okay, what is really important to you? This is what the project is at hand, this is what we signed off on, and this is what we have in scope. Do we need to realign our priorities, or should we go with what we originally agreed to together? And so it's just by having that constant communication with them, as well as with your internal team, making sure you find that balance of making both sides happy and also delivering a great outcome. So I'm going to hand it back to Claudia for the next one.
All right.
Sorry.
Do you have like a scope or some kind of a document that you like lay out this stuff?
Point to that.
So you just asked about if we have any document or any scope that we keep in mind. So one thing we do here with all our clients is we have something called a commander's intent. So every year we regroup with our clients to understand what are the goals that we're trying to achieve for next year and find a plan that really forms together for whether it's you're activating SEO, are you doing PR, are we doing in PPC, and finding that mesh of what they're trying to achieve. Along with, we have a lot of smart people on our team, and they can come up together with saying, this is the best solution for what we can do to deliver you the greatest results. So once we've got that commander's intent and understanding the goals that are in place, We then can build out a roadmap, and typically we'll look at a 3 to 12 month roadmap to understand the projects that will be at hand and roll them out throughout the year so we know what's upcoming, and that way we can all plan in advance and have the client kept on the same page of where we are in our progress. And using tools such as Teamwork really helps us to keep on track and have them fully in the loop of what's going on and when things can be delivered. It does vary depending on the size of the client. Some of our enterprise clients, we do need to do more of a formal sign-off, especially it depends what's on their side required. Or with some of our legacy clients, perhaps we want to get something more in scope of what's, any rates that have changed and such. But some of them, just a verbal or in-person meeting is sign-off enough to keep moving forward on a project that's been going on for over a year. Any other questions? Okay.
Great. So how to feel empowered to make requests. So how many times have you, asked somebody to do something for you and they say they're going to do it, they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And then every time something comes up, an excuse, it doesn't get done. So one of the biggest things that we have as client directors is to instill trust and have that relationship with your client. So once that's broken, it's very, very hard to get back. And same with your internal team as well, right? Your team has to trust you and know that you're going to put forward to the client the best work. So it works on the other side. So what I mean by, being true, as you're only as good as your word, is that you have to stand behind what you say. So be very careful about, again, overpromising, not just overpromising on the client side, but overpromising to your internal team as well, and making sure that you instill the trust and keep that going for both sides. Next is setting clear objectives and expectations. So no project or nothing should start without a clear intent and a clear objective. So your team should always understand what the end result and what you're trying to achieve is. So many times projects, when they happen in haste, don't have that. And so if you don't have that coming up from the top, it often gets lost in translation and a lot of projects lose their way. And that could be affecting time, cost, and also the quality of the project that gets put out. So one of the biggest things that happen once you set your clear objectives and goals and expectations is that you assume that your team is basically going to take what they've understood and during the meeting and carry on. That's a very big mistake. So what I like to call is the follow-up. The follow-up is you can never over-communicate with anybody. So being able to do constant check-ins and also tell your team any updates that you receive from the client, whether you think they're relevant or not, some of that information could really help a team member that's working on something. So constantly follow up, understand where the project is, doing little mini check-ins with both the client as well as your internal team will help to ensure that the project stays on time, on budget, and that the quality is really going to be produced to what the client is expecting. And this goes back to thinking about what the client is expecting. You are the internal client. So sometimes here at Powered by Search, we're account directors, we have a little bit of a tough position to play because yes, we're involved with a great team and we're part of Powered by Search, but we also have to think of ourselves as internal client representatives. So I have the most communication with a given client. I'm speaking with them, whether it be weekly, daily, or monthly. I'm the one that understands their frustrations, their needs, what they're focusing on. So I need to act as the internal client in here. So that means if a team member produces something that I don't think is up to par, I really need to speak up, right? Yes, it may cause the team member to have to do a little bit of rework, which is something we always try to reduce. But at the same time, we have to think about things in the eye of the client. So when you have them and their best interests always at the forefront and at heart, then a lot of the work that you're going to be producing is going to really be pleasing them and make them happy, right? And this really does establish a sense of trust, which with your clients, eventually with time, they end up trusting you to make decisions and calls for them, right? And so that's part of being the internal client. It's something that takes a lot of time, that can be a little bit troublesome with the internal team at first, but I think once you understand your clients very well, you really do find that being the internal client comes as basically second nature. Okay, and on to Michelle for reading between the lines.
Great. So one thing we find working as the client advocate in the office, as well as being account directors, is you often have to have a bit of thick skin. If the client's not happy, you just have to know how to take that in, have feedback with them, and move forward with the situation. However, sometimes you have clients that are not going to tell you exactly what they mean, and by this, you need to learn how to read between the lines. So there's a lot of power in the unsaid, and what we mean is more the nonverbal behavior including when people are pausing or being very quiet and doing other kind of behaviors where they're not actually telling you how they feel about a project. So for instance, if I'm sitting in a room and I can see someone's fidgeting a lot, they're fiddling with their phone, they're looking around, they're not really paying attention, there's a lot that's being said right there. Are they not interested in what you're talking about? Perhaps they don't want to be there, there's something else in their mind that's more important, and so forth. So it's up to you as the client advocate to understand what is going on. Are they really understanding and taking in what you're telling them? So asking questions like, do you understand what we're saying? Are you aligned with where we're going? And other sorts of questions like that will really help to guide the conversation and get them more engaged with what you're talking about. So as well, it's often you may not have a client that can come in and do in-person meetings. Perhaps we're having a call with a client in the States. So for example, let's say I'm having a call with Claudia. And I'm saying to her, oh, I think we're doing really well in this project. Are you happy with what we're signed off on? Are you really willing to move forward? And Claudia, are you happy with this?
Yeah, I am. I'm happy. I think it's great.
Yeah. Clearly, she's not paying attention. But from where I'm standing on the phone, I hear her say, okay, yeah, that's great. I can't really see what's going on. And if there's no tone of, let's say, sarcasm or distance or anything like that, I possibly think that everything's going well. So this ties right back into what Claudia said, how important it is to follow up. Always after you have a meeting, whether it's in person, on the phone, or even by email, is to send an email or a message following up, outline the points you discussed, as well as the takeaways from the meeting to make sure everyone's on the same page. Even asking that question of saying, are you aligned with what we agreed to? Is there anything I missed from here that you were expecting to see? And are you happy with this? Asking that one simple question, if you're happy, gets so much out of a client that you may not expect. And that ties right into, don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes you're going to have those awkward and difficult conversations, especially if you ask a client if they're happy and they're unhappy and they just kind of unload. That happens. Life is not clean. It's messy. But only by asking, you can help to improve the services and be amazed how many times that we've been able to change a situation that is going on a negative decline and actually make it a more positive experience and find a better outcome for the client, which overall makes them happier just because you asked them how they were feeling. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Okay. And the last one. Claudia, who knows a little bit about positivity.
Okay, this is where it gets a little bit spirit fingers. No, but I really am a big believer in positivity. I think that it is the glue that makes things move forward, because at the end of the day, we're all human. Everybody has busy lives, and we have bad days and we have good days. And so being able to navigate through that and being able to have a little bit of emotional intelligence, but also stay positive when it gets really difficult to stay positive, actually that's when it matters the most. So authority versus positivity. This is something I've come across a lot. Sometimes I think that there's a misconception that you can't be authoritative if you're positive, because if you're positive and you don't evoke a sense of seriousness and sternness, then they're not going to respect you. You're too positive. It's not going to give that same meaning. I completely disagree. I think that I think that you can definitely evoke that sense of authority by being positive. And again, it goes back to the trust from your team and being somebody that's always positive, that looks at things in a good, not in a negative way, really does garner the respect of your team and helps to push things forward. So I do believe that positivity and authority are kind of all in the same. Focusing on the solution and not the problem. So this happens a lot, right? Something goes wrong. There's a lot of variable factors that happen that are in and out of your control. So what do you do when, somebody drops the ball, right? So many times sometimes our nature to look for, a blame, to assign blame to something or understand where the problem went wrong. I think that's often where we lose the biggest opportunity, which is to focus that same energy on the solution instead. So many people focus on, something they can't change, which really makes no sense, right? Why are you going to look back? And sometimes, you're looking back at emails and where did the miscommunication happen? It's more important to then look forward and to see what you can do now to really prevent that from happening again, and to focus the energy on, again, something positive, which is, okay, it went wrong. What can we do now to fix it? And this goes back to, yes, I heard you, but I wasn't listening, right? So when somebody comes to you with something negative, you're kind of blocking out what they're really saying, because all you're hearing or all you're feeling is attacked. And so your interpretation of the message is completely, could be completely wrong. So that's why it's so important to stay positive in communication, because that's probably when it's going to be most effectively understood and heard. And then the last part is, yes, a little positivity goes a long way. So what I mean by that is you can be positive not just towards your team members and not just in a situation, but actually give that positivity out. So for example, I have a client, you know, they take a long time to get back to me. We're held up big time on content that we're waiting for them. So when they do give me that content, you know, saying, wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Now we can move forward with this. Like just that extra appreciation, you know, it may make a big difference to them. They may realize, oh, wow, this really does mean a lot. Same with your team. If your team is doing something that's, you know, if they're working hard and they're producing something good, reward them. You know, let them know, call them out. And everybody feels good about getting told, you know, they're doing a really good job. It really makes a difference between if you're having a bad day or a good day. So I wouldn't recommend to, you know, start being super positive and giving out compliments that you don't mean, but definitely be aware of it. So if you feel somebody did a good job and you want to say something, don't just assume that they know. Really do, like, let that out, and you'll really start to see a big difference in your team, the client communication that you have, and overall the relationships with everyone around you. So anybody have questions about positivity? Okay, great. We got this down.